Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm joined by a very special guest today, Lukas Hermann. How are you today, Lukas?
Hey there. Look, good. Fine. I'm doing good.
Lukas, you're joining us from the other side of the world. You're over in Deutschland,
Correct.
Germany.
The southern part.
Uh, I was telling you a little bit before we jumped on. I took 3 years of German in high school, and it's the only language I feel somewhat comfortable speaking. Like I know enough of the mannerisms and how to pronounce certain words that I feel I'm not fluent at all. But I'm pretty sure I could go to Germany, ask for a beer in the bathroom, and be perfectly happy.
I mean, your pronunciation sounds good. So you
I
you
do.
retained it.
So this is a random aside. When I was in high school, my German teacher was directly from Germany. She was a immigrant and she was teaching high school German, and she was a stickler for pronunciation. And the so when we were in German class, we had to speak in German 100% of the time. If you didn't know how to say it, you had to look it up. And this is before we had computers in our pockets. So I had a dictionary and I was looking up words, and if you mispronounced it, she made you repeat yourself a couple
Yeah.
dozen times
So
before you got it right.
my wife is from Brazil, and we moved here 7 years ago, and she still has a bit of a difficulty pronouncing because for some reason Germans are really particular. If you don't pronounce it right, they sometimes don't
Yep.
make the effort to understand you. Yeah, a bit sad for my culture, but that's how it is. And she always had the trouble with doing the R in the beginning. We have a very distinct R sound, like Restmüll, Rathaus, right? And if you don't do it right, Germans can get a bit like confused and not wanting to know what you say.
I can understand from being native English, someone trying to speak English as their second or third language. Sometimes it's like, I'm pretty sure you didn't say that word the correct way, but like we're usually polite enough to go, "Oh, I understand what you're saying." If you understand what someone's trying to get through, it's easy to go through. But funny story, I had a friend and he sent me a Medium article, and we're going to put this in the show notes. And the article was titled "How a Simple Countdown Timer Website Makes $10,000 per Month." I read this and I was just getting the excited feelings because this is what folks who listen to the podcast are really kind of striving for. They would love to have this product that's producing income and the glorious MRR, monthly reoccurring revenue for something that you've built. And I knew that this is the type of talk that I want to have on the podcast. So I reached out to a mutual friend or acquaintance of ours, Justin Jackson, and he said, "I can hook you up, Kevin." And he made all the connections. And so Lukas is here and he's chatting with us. Lukas, before we jump in, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into StageTimer.
Yeah, you said my name, you said where I come from. I'm 34 years of age. We have been nicely settled here, married to a Brazilian, as I already mentioned. And really a developer in heart, right? Like a kind of the typical German engineer mindset mixed with somebody who is excited about software and computers. That's probably describing me.
Your current gig, as I'm aware, is StageTimer.io. Tell us a little bit about what StageTimer's function is.
Correct. So I'm the founder. We started 3 years ago with this. And what it does is, if you think of a TED Talk, right? The person standing on stage has this screen in front of them with a red countdown number. Now, we're not building that exact product that they use, but we're building a product like this, right? And it is used by many people that do video production or event organization. And they would have their kind of overview of the event with them on their computer. They're sitting, backstage or with the technical staff. And when they click a button, somewhere at the stage, a countdown timer starts counting. It says, what's up currently. They can send some messages if, you want them to hold the microphone a bit closer to their mouth, or they need to, step a little bit more into the light, then they can kind of flash this on the screen. That's the kind of software that we are building.
Gotcha. Now, where did the idea for StageTimer come from?
So this is a really interesting story. I was always fascinated as a developer of kind of building my own product, especially when I became employed in a startup. You kind of get this product feeling a little bit, and I saw on Twitter many other people building not a traditional like Silicon Valley venture funded way that you have known until then, but bootstrapping it, just starting it, launching it themselves, earning their first revenue. And it was really attractive to me. So I was looking for ideas. I had this long list on my cell phone. Whenever I came across an idea, I just wrote it down. Oh, I could build this, I could build that, right? And one day I was at a friend's, he has a studio set up. And there's one person in one room standing in front of a green screen and talking into the camera. And he's sitting in the other room, doing the recording, switching the video. And before the recording started, he would get up, and I was there unrelated. He asked me something about servers and networking. And he would like jump up, run into this other room, click on an old computer that he had sitting there with like a timer software, clicked start, ran back into his side room, and everything else was remote controlled. And I thought, surely there must be a better solution, right? As a web developer, I thought, like, this is such an easy problem to solve. Surely, if I search in Google, immediately I will find something where I can remote control a timer through my browser interface. And I didn't find anything that can do that. I only found like old software that you download, and it looks like it's written in Windows 98. So
That was a good year.
Yeah, it was. So I put it on my list, and then I kind of revisited this idea. I want to build my own product, and I literally from that list, when I look through what can I build, here's an amazing thing. This could all be great. But I thought, let me turn this around. I'm a developer. I know how to develop a software. I've never dealt with customers. I've never integrated payment solutions. I've never even built my own user authentication flow. Like there's all these unknowns that I have if I want to build my first product. Let me just pick the simplest idea on this list as a training ground. So that's the one I picked. I thought, like, timer synchronized through the browser. How hard can it be? That's where the idea come from. And I coded it up basically in a weekend, as one does when you're employed. You do your own side projects in the weekend. I put it online on some kind of hosting, free hosting Netlify site. And I shared it. I was like, okay, but now what do I do with it? Right? I went back to my friend, but his computer was too old. So it literally didn't run on this computer because whatever, Firefox, this and this version that doesn't run any modern JavaScript. So I was like, okay, give up on that. I was like, where do I put this that people know about it? So I go on Reddit, and I'm looking for subreddits, and it's like you go on Reddit and you find all these. It's crazy what communities exist, but if you need to find a specific subgroup, it's ridiculously hard. So I think where do people live that need this kind of thing? So I find this Redding search engine almost that somebody built that gave me like a network of which subreddits are connected, and I find one's called not professional AV, something broadcasting. I forgot the name. Commercial AV. Okay, sounds good. Post it there. Say, hey, I built this tool. Put it online. What do you think? People visit it and give me surprisingly good feedback for Reddit, right? Reddit, you feel like it's just kind of toxic. Everybody's trolling you. Everybody's just like ripping you apart. Like, but they didn't. They were super helpful. Like, I've been looking for this for ages. It's exactly what I need. Can you add this feature, that feature, this feature? And that was really the moment when I thought, wait, there may be more than I thought at first.
I think that's really important, finding those watering holes for where different customers might exist. And yeah, you're right. A lot of Reddit is really toxic. And at the moment you drop anything that's self promotion or here's a thing I built, go take a look at it. Uh, Reddit will, a lot of Reddit will just attack you. And
Yeah,
I'm thankful that you found a group that was willing to give you constructive feedback
I mean,
on the
specifically
product.
subreddits like small business, entrepreneurship, startups. There's so many people just self-promoting themselves. They immediately kick you and they immediately block you.
Yeah.
And I immediately made a big border around it and said, I want to go to the people that would use my tool, not people that would, be excited about making money from in the internet. And I think this was the kind of saving grace, because what I found out is that if you make a tool that is not for the prime developer community, as to be very fair, most people build tools for other developers. If you don't
Yeah.
build tools for other developers, you find that they're really underserved, right? Like we are such developers. There's a solution for everything. There's 2 solutions, 3 solutions. But then you go to an area like audiovisual not live stream, more like live video production, right? Which is much more
Mhm.
commercial. And suddenly they really appreciate any solution that you build for them.
And it seems like you just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Someone had the problem that you were thinking about solving, and you were able to solve it for that one person. And then, if one person has that problem, it's very likely that hundreds or thousands of people have that exact same problem. Um, that is really cool. Were you working a regular full time job while you were kicking off Stage Timer? What were you doing for, I don't know, money at
Yeah,
that time?
I was full-time a front-end developer in a startup.
And so you kick off Stage Timer, you start getting some feedback. What's it look like to monetizing Stage Timer? Was that something you did right from the beginning, or did you have sort of a free period and then start charging for it later?
Right. I think so. Again, different to many people that kind of set off with this thought, I'm going to make money on the internet. I told myself, I'm going to figure out how to build a product first. So it was free, it was online, it was ugly. It was used, which was probably the most important. I saw that people came back. Um, and I started really building the features people asked for first. I didn't think primarily of monetization. I wanted to build something that's useful. With the thought, eventually I'm gonna get to that. So
Mhm.
I'm building a user sign up flow so people can kind of save their work. Um, I'm building different features, and then I think, and maybe I have to clarify. I never thought this would make money. I never even lost like like yeah, people use it, but a timer. Come on, who pays for a timer, right? That's what's my thought.
Yeah.
Every iPhone has a timer. Um, but I implement a payment method, not so much because I think people will pay money, but because I wanted to understand how it works. What are the options out there? How do you integrate it into your system? How does this look like? And then I thought the next project, and it's easier. So I do this. I think of like some pro features that I could include at the same time. So it would make sense. You don't want to, I wanted to have freemium and then put on the website, hey, here's a premium feature and you can pay for it. And then the funny thing is, the night I deployed this payment integration, which was 8 months after, that first free ugly version, I posted on Twitter to my 300 followers, and I get a purchase right away. It's like I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, who would pay money for this? And I reached out to the person, like, yeah, he saw it on this original Reddit post, has been using it ever since. He loves kind of engaging with new software, and he kind of half purchased it because he found it useful, and the other half because he wanted to encourage me building it. So the classic early adopter. And I think this making your first dollar online with a product that, like, somebody coming to your website and giving you money, it's such a motivational boost to keep going. It's incredible.
I've been through a couple startups, and that first dollar, that first notification from Stripe or whatever payment processor you're using, it says you've made however much money. Like, that is the most exciting feeling in the world, even if it's your $1 that you've made in the entire month. Like, that is the most exciting. You said something, and I want to come back and reiterate. You said you only had about 300 some followers at the time that you launched StageTimer. And I think there's this conception out there that the a lot of these successful companies are the people who have tens of thousands of followers. They have these big bases that they promote to, and then the money comes in. But you didn't have that. You're probably where a lot of people are. You're kind of proving the point that you don't need this massive social following to launch a product and be successful with the product.
I think it is a common misconception, if I can just, it's a common misconception. People think that they need a lot of Twitter followers and then they can launch something, and then, it gets number one on Product Hunt, and then it's when they get their customers. But that's wrong. You want to launch something that's useful. And specifically, these followers, they're usually, like, who are they? They are other developers, they're marketers, whoever, hustlers. And they, as I said before, they already have every problem mostly solved. It's hard to get like a standout problem for them. But if you look in other
Yeah.
industries, in these people that are not on Twitter, that maybe only find their stuff on Google, if you find a problem that they are looking for, it's this, this blue ocean, it may be a small group, but the group is big enough to support one developer easily.
Did most of your initial customers come from, say, that Reddit group or your personal Twitter, where eventually you built up to a decent MRR? Where did those initial customers come from?
Yeah, so Reddit you cannot stress too much, right? You cannot, like, post every week. I posted once more 6 months later, kind of a follow-up post, but then I did not anymore. In fact, most of the people came through Google and through word of mouth. It's basically a 50-50 split, or was, as of last year. And just last week, I talked to a customer that uses our tool every day. And I asked him, if you look for a tool like mine, where do you even go? What do you do? And they told me, yeah, I'm sometimes on Facebook, I'm sometimes on LinkedIn, I sometimes go to trade show. But really, if I have a specific technical problem, I go on Google until I find a solution. And that's all I needed to know.
So how does that change your strategy for, or make up your strategy for marketing StageTimer? Are you devoting a lot of time to SEO and trying to get those Google hits?
Yes. So from the beginning, we said we do SEO marketing. We write articles. For me, I also thought I write a really good documentation. And I believe that because my customers are very technical people, not technical in the sense of developers, but technical, like they use hardware, they use cameras, they use video mixers. They do speak a technical language. If I can write articles that are not like the typical SEO fluff, right? How do you get your page on whatever first of Product Hunt? But I'm actually writing articles like, how do you use a timer software together with your hardware video mixer. And I do, like, step by step, and explain what are the possibilities and how to use the HTTP requests and how to use, like, browser embeds. And even though these articles get comparatively few hits, right? We have search volumes of maybe 100 people per month. because these are so like technically specific how-to guides, almost all of these people that come to these pages have such a high intent. They really want to solve this particular problem and often end up staying and purchasing.
How has the product changed or adapted since your original version to where you are today? Because I imagine with audiovisual people, they're used to a very specific way of doing things. And as a developer coming into these different environments and situations, we often have to learn how the job is done and then adapt the software to help the job.
Yeah.
So how has StageTimer changed, if any, from the original version you've written to what it is today based off the feedback from your customers?
Yeah. So honestly, I think it is a blessing that I was not part of the video production industry and came in as an outsider, essentially, which I think is also encouraging to your listeners. Like, you don't have to be an expert in the domain. I know people say that, but I don't believe it. What I believe is what you need to do is listen to the people, listen to your customers, listen to your users. And they gave us plenty of feedback. And of course, we had to separate the noise from the signal. But once we decide this is kind of our scope and we understand more and more how do people actually use our software, how do they, what kind of problems specifically do they use? That's when we started kind of to really focus on the right features, implement it in the right way. And I think that made all the difference. Like, coming back to that same customer we talked to, it was such an enlightened moment. I asked them, what kind of feature are you missing? What is bad about our software, right? What do I need to change? And they say, yeah, I actually asked that question to our director yesterday because he apparently also uses our software on a regular basis. And he gave me this answer. He said, I really have some requests, but I'm almost afraid of saying them because your software is so easy and intuitive. I don't want to change it. And of course, they gave me some requests, but I found this so interesting because the whole time that I built the software, I thought I don't want to be another Excel. I don't want to be another like functional piece of software that has buttons everywhere just to get the job done. I want to get a job done, but in a way that is easy to pick up for the first customer, as easy as it is for the one that uses it for 2 years already. And by him saying this, it kind of confirmed that, man, I've worked 2 years, 3 years, right, on this tool with this intent of making it easy to use. And here he is kind of confirming that to me without knowing that I wanted it all along. So it's just this moment. And I think if you really listen to your customers and if you have a good hand for building a good product, you can come as an outsider and you can come without any community following and get into a niche.
How long did it take from the moment you started monetizing StageTimer to eventually, I guess, quitting your full time job? Because you were working full time as a web developer, you said.
Yeah.
Assuming you're not doing that anymore, you're all in on StageTimer. When did you hit that goal of not needing the full time job anymore?
Correct. So after, like I said already, that it took eight months, right? Because I worked in the evening, I worked in the weekends to even implement a payment system. It took another 8 months to grow it to 1,000 euros per month in revenue. And then it went a little bit faster. But it took me, I think we reached like 3 to 4K of revenue per month. When I kind of got a bit bored in my old job, right? I mean, you mentioned it before the show started, like this developer, you sit in a company, you kind of know in your heart of hearts that you are basically producing 3 times of value of what you're actually paid, right? Kind of deep down, and I was kind of disillusioned with that, and I didn't like the kind of task rapid style that we had going at that time. Um, and looked around for another job, and like another job offer came, but then they discontinued their product after 3 months. And then my wife encouraged me and said, "Hey, you know what? You do such a great job with this project of yours. Why don't you try it full time?" So we took a little bit of a leap of faith at, I would say, I think it was 4,000 euros per month, which was not quite enough to sustain us to support our lifestyle. But with a bit of savings and a bit of grit and a bit of let's spend some month in Asia and save some money, it worked out.
Oh, so change your location so
Yeah,
you lower your cost of living. I've heard that from a lot of folks,
yeah.
done that because that's a difficult thing to do in the States is taking that leap of faith because there's so many little things like healthcare. There's so many people rely on their full-time job for healthcare that taking the leap of faith to go work full time, you just have to give all that up. You have an added expense, and it's just overall more difficult unless you have a spouse or a partner who is able to cover all those details. So it's really exciting to hear that your goal was much lower than what a lot of people's might be, but it's all doable. And it sounds like when you were able to go full time on StageTimer, was that really just 100% of your day? Just StageTimer all the time?
I mean, yeah, I think something that's a bit under, like, when you go full time, right? You lose this structure that an office, even if you're remote, that an office job gives you. And having been freelancing before already, I knew that it's going to be hard. This aspect of being alone, being just by yourself, having to do your own schedule is not easy. So I immediately actively tried, where do I know people? Where can I get in contact with people? Where can I have some kind of structure, even if it's not people that work directly with me, just some support structure around working as a developer. And I was really fortunate because in this industry of video professionals, I found a Discord server. They invited me. I made friends with the owner, who also was building a tool at that time, and we ended up having regular talks over Discord, having regular Zoom calls to exchange, what we're doing. And nowadays, he's even my co-founder in another project that we are building together. So something like this, I would say, is really pivotal when you make the step.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Something I wanted to pivot to was just the life work balance. And
Yeah,
I think you already covered it. It's when you're by yourself, it's really difficult to maintain that structure that a full-time job gives you.
yeah,
You have certain expectations that you have to hit. You have a team that's holding you
yeah.
accountable. And when it's just you have to hold yourself accountable or find someone to hold you accountable.
What happens a lot is that people get into some burnout, right? So they go work for themselves, and you work a lot. You work a lot. You put all, your what you use from your job, and then in the evening you still hustle for yourself. Now you hustle for yourself the whole time until late at night, even in the weekend. Don't take a break. It goes well for 2 years. But after 2 years, your body will eventually say, I can't do it anymore. And what you don't realize is that at your job, you have these water cooler moments, right? You get up from your chair, you go talk to your
Mhm.
colleagues. Even in you have the meetings, even in Slack, you can kind of get this. The lazy moments. You work by yourself. You don't have that. You're like full concentration all the time, everything. And either you learn very quickly, okay, I have to specifically take breaks. Your mind cannot do much more than 6 hours of concentration. It's just not in it. And if you do that 3-4 days in a row, you need a break, a longer break. And if you do too much on a day, you just need to have a break. But what do? We are developers. We code on our free time. It's terrible. So you have to learn how to balance that out. Funnily enough, what I do nowadays is I play with Lego. I
There you
buy
go.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. I buy myself a Lego set, um, and I constructed constructed over 3 evenings, and it's awesome. And then I found this website called Rebrickable, and then they give you alternative instructions for the same parts that come in a Lego set, so you can just disassemble it and then build your next thing.
That's such a great way to use your time and to reset. There are a lot of worse ways to reset your time. Lucas, how big is the StageTimer team? Is it still just yourself, or do you have employees or contractors?
Yeah, pretty soon my wife joined me. She was the solution with her job, and I said, "Why don't you help me? I need somebody for customer service and marketing, and if you're willing to learn that, I'm like, let's do it together." And she happy to join me. She doesn't do it full time anymore. She has her own web store at the site, but she does all of the customer service and most of the marketing that we do.
That's good to have. And you
Mm.
get to work with your partner, and that's always nice.
Super helpful, super nice, and I'm really blessed to have such an arrangement. And then we have worked with like contractors on and off, right? There's a project, let's invest some money, let's search somebody. But just now, um, I would say we have reached kind of the finances that allow us to hire, quote unquote. I can't hire easily because I don't have the legal team yet, but I at least
Yeah.
can get a contractor.
What's the next position that you would want to bring on to help you with?
A developer. I'm looking for another developer. Partly because I don't want to be the only one that is there if the server goes down, right? And also, just the backlog gets longer and longer, and then the project's 3 years old, so you need to do upkeep, housekeeping, updates,
Yeah.
bug fixing. You need to scale the infrastructure. Obviously, you cannot know everything. I'm not a super senior engineer that has done all of these things before. So I really need help there. And then you are the founder, right? I'm the founder. There's just other things that steal your time. There's,
Yeah.
incoming. Let's make a partnership here. Let's do this. Answer emails. Talk to your customers. Understand where the product needs to go in 1 year. Yeah. Anyway, you get the point.
Well, I guess anyone listening to the podcast, if you're looking we're pushing for freelancers, side gigs. That's if someone in our community wants to reach out. What's the StageTimer stack?
I'm doing
What technology?
Vue.js and then a Node backend, and then
There you go.
Firebase with some user authentication stuff.
So anyone out there listening, if you're looking for something on the side, let's go talk to Lucas and get him some help. So maybe you never know, someone out there might be listening, and this is right up their alley.
Yeah, could be.
We've been talking about StageTimer for quite a bit. Let's talk about just a couple little other things. What did you do before StageTimer? Were there any projects that you were working on that just didn't take off? That I hate to use the word failure, but just failed completely.
Yeah, so it's kind of the myth, right? The overnight success myth. I did do stuff before, right? I started when I was young doing kind of websites, the typical WordPress. Everybody was a WordPress developer at one time in their life. But I did plenty of freelancing when I was studying, and then even had the plan of building a startup together with 2 friends from Germany here. And we classic way, right? We looked for funding. We had a gigantic vision of like computer aided translation services. However, the relationship between us founders turned sour. And I think there was also like a significant lack of understanding how to actually get a product to the market. Both of this combined, I would say, led to some very bitter experiences. Turned out that one of the co-founders was kind of kicked out. Not want to say that I'm completely guiltless there. And then the other one kind of left for the US. And I was kind of left footing the bill for the entire thing and had to figure it out. And it was not a nice experience. It taught me a lot what it means, how to trust people and in what capacity, and how to be careful with the team you choose, with the partners you choose. So it was a very painful failure, actually. Also very costly. However, as every failure goes, you look back and you say, okay, what went wrong? What did I do wrong? And you learn from it. And very practical example, one thing that I decided to do with my StageTimer startup project, I literally just rejected almost all processes. I said, let me do everything like as messy as possible, as long as possible. Because the more structure I introduce in the beginning, the more I will just be slow and slow and slow. So if I can just do the bare minimum, the thing that just to get it done and force myself, because I'm like a German engineer, right? We want to do everything perfect. So I force myself like, no, I have to get it done. And then later make it better when I have the time and the resources. It helped me immensely to get this off the ground. It helped me, that didn't always work perfectly, but more often than not, it really helped me to move things forward. Yeah.
That's a good point. We talk a lot about the minimal viable product, and sometimes that's not going to be pretty. It needs to be good enough to do what it needs to do and see if you get those initial customers. And assuming you didn't make the classic blunder where you say as a developer, I'll go back and fix this later, and you never go back and fix it. Did you go back and fix your processes? Did you clean up your code? Did you make it prettier,
Oh yeah,
more
I mean,
efficient?
yeah, I have worked long enough in a startup, right? You know that you have to kind of some degree of budget has to go into refactoring, into to cleaning up old mess. Yeah, definitely.
What's next? Is StageTimer the thing you're going to concentrate most on for next couple of years, or do you have other things that you'd like to start doing?
Well, I mean, in the spirit of the name of the podcast, right, Multithreaded, I did start a second tool together with this friend that I mentioned before, co-founder, which is in the same space. It's in the event video production space. A very similar product in fact, but a bit different in focus. And my thought was always, I want to have, from the beginning, StageTimer was for me just a test, just a training ground. So I thought I need some kind of second source of income. Also, I have no clue how big is the total addressable market of StageTimer, right? It could be
Yeah.
that we kind of plateau at around $1 million in revenue per year, and it could be that we go all the way to 10 or even higher. We don't quite know, and it's very hard to estimate because there's no comparable product. So that's one thing, right? And then I always in the back of my mind, I had this kind of master plan, right? I do my first product is gonna help me just to have enough to sustain my lifestyle. And then from that money that comes in as, quote unquote, passive income, passive enough that I can kind of choose my own time, I can build the next product that will hopefully get me to like the 10 million evaluation. And then with that, maybe I can do something bigger, something that needs a serious amount of money and investment to do, this dream of really developing nice and cool products. I'm at the first step still, right? I'm still working on StageTimer, and now more than ever, because it has grown much more than I ever expected.
What recommendation would you have for someone who's out there listening that has the notebook full of ideas and they want to start executing on something? What would you recommend to that person?
Yeah, right. Like the question is, what tool do you choose? What solution do you choose? And I think it's not a bad idea to just choose the simplest one, because complex ones are complex to explain and may not be understood, and then in the end they may be a failure anyway. You need a bit of luck. So if you just use the simplest one, it's easy to explain, so you already have this out of the way, and then it's easy for you to build because you probably have only like 5 or 6 unknowns instead of 20. That will help you. And I think that the first product will teach you so much. Like just trying to market your first product as a developer will teach you so much about market, about products, about startups, that it's much easier to make a better educated guess for your second one.
Hey, that's great advice. And I kind of want to go back to what you were saying earlier is find the watering holes. So try to find those niche Reddit groups where people hang out and don't try to market to developers. And I've talked about this numerous times. Developers are a horrible market to
Terrible.
talk to. And not just for the reason of that there's so many tools that solve so many different problems. Developers in particular are just allergic to any sort of cold marketing. And in order to get your product across to them, you have to think outside the box. You have to be creative about it. So not saying it's impossible, it's just hard to do.
And there's
And
another funny mental block we have as developers. We work as freelancers for in another startup. We see their problems. We find them boring because they're like product other industry problems. We look at our own problems. We found them interesting. They're all solved. Nobody wants to pay money for them. That's what we build. Instead, if we would just go, open our eyes in the startup that we are, and in the freelancing job that we are, it's like, hey, what does this person that is not a developer, why do they spend 5 hours on this one task? Why the heck can I not make it easier? And then making it easier, and then find out that there's like B2B customers that are happy. They're literally happy to find your tool and use it. And then you think of your tool. This is not, if I would show this to another developer, they would criticize it. And then, or to a designer, and then you show it to this person and they're like, this is so much easier than anything else I've ever used. And I'm so thankful. Like this kind of customer, they're out there and they're everywhere. You just have to find their problems and solve them for them.
Lucas, anything that we haven't talked about that we should probably bring up before the podcast wraps up?
I think we got it covered. I can, if you wanna check out, I have a blog called lukashermann.dev, where I sometimes post a bit, long form what I'm doing. I'm on Twitter. I'm quite active. I try to share really authentic stuff that's happening. _L_Hermann. So to plug my stuff.
And I'll put links to all that in the show notes. But Lucas, I really appreciate you coming on the show with me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you about StageTimer and just it's a true success story of just taking an idea and running with it and then finding some success. And I hope this is inspirational to anyone out there that's listening. And thank you again, Lucas, for hanging out with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
And everyone else, thank you for listening to the Multithreaded Income Podcast. We'll see you again next week. You've been listening to the Multithreaded Income Podcast. I really hope that this podcast has been useful for you. If it has, please take a moment to leave a review wherever you get your podcast from. And don't forget, the conversation doesn't stop here. Join us on our Discord at mti.to/Discord. I've been your host, Kevin Griffin, and we'll see you next week. Cha-ching!